This is the first joint report on international cooperation and competition enforcement by the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development and the International Competition Network. It follows the first joint survey on international enforcement cooperation by the OECD and ICN in 2012, which resulted in two separate reports, one from each organisation. The report reflects the work of many people over many years who have worked on international enforcement cooperation, both in the ICN, OECD, and within the authorities themselves. Particular thanks to this report goes to the ICN drafting team who worked with the OECD drafting team. So why is international enforcement cooperation important? The globalized, digitized economy has created a highly interconnected world that has increased the potential for cross-border competition issues. The significant growth in the number of competition authorities and their competencies has also driven this increase. National competition authorities need to cooperate with each other on cross-border matters to ensure effective and efficient enforcement of competition law, and also to realise the important economic and welfare goals of sound competition policy on both a national and global scale. What does this report do? It outlines the ongoing drivers of international enforcement cooperation. It provides an overview of all of the work done by the OECD and ICN to improve enforcement cooperation, especially since 2012. And it reviews the current status of cooperation, and where relevant, compares it to the 2012 results. Together, these three aspects are what lead to some of the key conclusions in the report. There were a total of 62 respondents to the survey. All of the respondents were members of the ICN, and 100% of the OECD members and participants responded. In comparison to the 2012 survey, the response rate increased by 9%. The respondents' jurisdictions represent approximately 80% of global GDP. International enforcement cooperation, in general, increased across all enforcement areas since 2012. The number of authorities with no experience in international enforcement cooperation has significantly declined since 2012, from 31% to 9%. Authorities value international enforcement cooperation. The survey identified three categories of benefit: opportunities for more efficient and effective consideration of competition matters, further enhancing coordination and cooperation systems and practices amongst authorities, and also improving the relationships, trust, and transparency, which are key to pursuing cooperation between authorities. The OECD and ICN have undertaken significant work since 2012 to support enforcement cooperation, which is valued and used by the authority. This work has included comparative reports, non-binding recommendations and frameworks, roundtable discussions, and practical tools for improving enforcement cooperation in different enforcement areas. There are some significant and persistent challenges to cooperation, including legal barriers. Competition authorities, the OECD and ICN and others in the competition community have undertaken a significant amount of work to improve enforcement cooperation, and this has been aimed at addressing some of these key limitations and challenges. However, the survey indicates that many of these limitations and challenges remain. The survey shows 5 key categories of challenge that limit enforcement cooperation. They relate to resourcing, coordination and timing, legal limitations, trust and reciprocity, and practical issues such as language and time differences. The report outlines some proposed future areas of focus that authorities, the OECD and ICN could consider in order to improve enforcement cooperation. They fall within the following categories: to develop further enforcement cooperation work products and networks, to improve transparency and trust, to provide practical support for further developing effective regional enforcement cooperation, and to remove substantive and legal barriers to cooperation. So what are the next steps? The OECD and ICN will continue to cooperate and coordinate to work together on improving international enforcement cooperation. The OECD will draft a monitoring report that will look at the status of cooperation and the use of the OECD recommendation on cooperation.